In today's episode,
the buzzword is AI, which everybody talks about these days. So I didn't stray.
Dimitar troubleshoots a no-way audio problem.
Anytime I pick up a call, when I say hello, how are you? They don't hear the hello.
Blames the firewall.
So I get the packet capture, I open it, I look at the packets, and I'm like, oh my God.
And the service provider.
Damn. So it's one of the internet service providers in between.
Before finding the root cause.
Welcome to Cisco Tech Stories, a podcast with real-life stories from real-life engineers.
Welcome to episode 23 of the Cisco Tech Stories podcast, your go-to destination for all things tech, troubleshooting, and innovation with Cisco. We are your hosts, Tristan and Nico, coming to you from Cisco EMEA. Hello, and thanks for tuning in. Hello, Nico.
Hello, Tristan. In today's episode, we've got an intriguing troubleshooting tale to share, straight from the world of the Webex cloud collaboration technology. Together, we'll navigate from device to device, dissect the problem, and uncover the root cause behind this curious issue. But that's not all. Stick around until the end for an exciting conversation about artificial intelligence. We'll explore how AI is shaping the future of IT support in tech and hear from our special guest, Dimitar Dimitrov, a technical leader in Cisco Collaboration Tech, about his work on enhancing the new Cisco Virtual Engineer.
So grab your headphones, get comfortable, and join us for a deep dive into the tech trenches. Let's get started.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm doing very well. How about you?
We're doing great. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit? So who are you, what you're doing at Cisco, what things do you like, what's your favorite food?
Yeah, sure thing. So my name is Dimitar, and as the name probably suggests to some of the listeners, I come from the sunny land of Bulgaria. And I've been part of Cisco for, let's say, 10 years with an asterisk. Why an asterisk? Because I started as a red badge in my home country in Bulgaria, in Sofia, and I worked for Cisco through IBM. So I was always part of the collaboration world, so voice, video, co-manager, all those good things. And back then, I just started fresh out of university, so part of the co-manager team, the good old on-prem days.
So when you say red badge for IBM, that means you were outsourcing tech cases for Cisco, right? So and that was night shift, right? Because I think Bulgaria was working for the US tech.
Yes, okay. Exactly. Good old night shifts. I cannot tell you how many times when I was coming home after work with my car, I was stopped by police officers patrolling, and they were like, "Why are you coming home at 3 or 4 a.m.?" I'm like, "I'm coming from work," and they were always like, "Can you blow here to see if you drank some alcohol?" Co-manager was the first team. Then I graduated to a new team that they were opening. The motivation was that it was going to be the first team that does day shifts. So that was for Webex. So we did Webex Teams and meetings. And that lasted actually throughout COVID until 2021, when I decided that I want to become a full-time Cisco employee. And that's when I moved to Poland, to Krakow. I stayed a little bit in the on-prem world again until I am now a technical leader for Webex Calling. So again, going back to Webex and cloud. What's my favorite food? I don't know, whatever my wife or mom cooks is probably going to be my answer. And even, let's say, even if I don't like it, I have to like it, right?
Is there a lot of goulash in Bulgaria?
We do, actually the cuisine and the culture is pretty similar, I would say, between Poland and Bulgaria, which is probably the reason why I also stayed as long as I have. And I found my wife here because, yeah, all the similarities.
How is different the work to work as an outsourcer versus working from Cisco directly?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is as an outsourcer, the model is that you are 100% utilizing your time to solve cases. So you just have like this big amount of volume. While working for Cisco, you have the opportunity to grow yourself and have time to develop yourself by learning additional stuff, or just having more time to to learn the technology. While as a red batch, I felt that there was just a huge amount of volume and you were always on cases.
And I think you are now using that time, as you say, to learn new stuff. You have side projects, I believe, that we might talk at the end of the podcast if we have time.
The buzzword is AI, which everybody talks about these days. So
Never heard of
I
it.
didn't stray I didn't stray too far away from that. So that's one of the things for sure.
What story do you have for us today?
It's actually the story that repeats for all, I think, SaaS and cloud solutions, is that you have a customer using some cloud-based solutions, such as Webex Calling in this case. They're sending traffic from their on-premise, which is not making its way to the cloud vendor. In this case, it was Cisco and Webex Calling and our media server. So it's always the story repeats of where did the traffic go? Like, where is my traffic? I would say the twist of this one was that the issue was intermittent, which always makes it more interesting.
It's always the best ones.
What does it mean? Like you are trying to call a colleague somewhere and then the call doesn't make it through? Is that what happened?
Actually, the customer, they have these call center agents, right, that they have through Webex Calling. And whenever they were making a call, or usually most of the times they were receiving call from the outside, from a PSTN user, from a cell phone or whatever, intermittently, they wouldn't be able to hear that user and the user wouldn't be able to hear them. So it's what we call in the collab world dead air or no-way audio. And of course, it was happening intermittently, which was more difficult to troubleshoot because if you try to recreate it or find a pattern, it's a lot more difficult.
So here it's one step above the I hear you, but you don't hear me. It's like nobody can hear each other, right?
Exactly.
So if I have a Webex calling question already, because I troubleshooted a lot of these because I work in wireless and typically with wireless handsets, but it was before Webex. And so I learned that there's the call setup is with the call manager. And then you have the call audio, which is data, and it's a different path. And when you have one-way or no-way audio, you have to look at that audio call. But they were directly between the two handsets. Now, if you do something like Webex calls, because it's a cloud solution, it always goes through the cloud, right? Even if you're two people on the same location, or...
No, that's actually not true. So it depends on where the users are located and what device they're using. So obviously, if one of the users is using a cell phone, through a mobile provider, it's always going to go through cloud. But if the users are in the same office, at the same location, or even two different offices connected either through WAN or through a local gateway that has a public IP, we can use ICE to stream the media directly between the endpoints. So we don't have to hairpin it through our cloud media server.
What's ICE? Because ICE to me is an authentication server, and I'm sure it means something else to you.
Yeah, this is simply a protocol to find the what is the IP address, the private IP address and port of the other endpoint sitting in a local network.
They try to detect if they're in the same place, right? That's how it works.
Yes, or if they're even on the same local network, in the same subnet even, it's even easier, right?
Because I've seen with it was actually another vendor solution, not Webex, but at some customers, I've seen some calls always going through the cloud, and I was surprised. I'm like, oh, so is that how cloud, as a service is always working? And you're saying no. So maybe they had something else not working there. I was like, okay, that's good to know. So, okay, you have to troubleshoot. And so you also have to figure out, is this call supposed to go through the cloud or is it supposed to be local, right? Because you have to determine when it's happening, when it's not. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah, and that was the difficult part. And I think when I jumped on the case, because I wasn't part of it from the beginning, it only came to me as let's say an escalation. Things were already hot with the customer, right? So it's been going on for a while, and usually in these scenarios, I would say when you have media issues, the best way to make good progress is to actually isolate the issue and not focus on collecting logs, which is usually what newer engineers make as a mistake. They always try to go for collecting the logs first, while it's always better to ask a bunch of questions and to do a few test calls, even without collecting logs, just to make sure that you get the pattern and get the details correctly. Because sometimes and here's the problem. I'm not sure if you have this with wireless, but I know other technologies like routing and switching, etc., don't have this issue. With collaboration, voice and video, the biggest problem when we do troubleshooting as engineers is that we have to work with end users a lot, because you have to get their point of view. You have to, well, I know how this sounds. It's not as bad, but you have to get their point of view, and you have to get exactly the symptom that they're experiencing. And you can imagine an engineer and an end user are not using the same language. So you have to be able to translate and get the terminology from them correctly, so you can figure out what to do next.
And not just that, but you also need to constantly interrupt them and say, can you try another test, call this person, or do it again, try again. And they have something else to do than just to be your hands on the phone to type the number for you. I was laughing when you said it, but that's what I had in mind. Not in the bad way at all, right?
I cannot tell you how many times we've asked for the end users to record with their mobile device just to show us exactly what they're doing. Because there was like this old case back in the day where a user was complaining, and it was the only user we found out that was complaining of this. They said, anytime I pick up a call, when I say hello, how are you, they don't hear the hello. And we're like looking at logs, packet captures, decoding, etc. Nothing, everything's fine. And then we say, can you record with your mobile what you're doing? And they get like they're recording the physical Cisco phone that they're picking the call from, right? So the phone is ringing, and they do like this with the finger, like they're trying to pick the call. And as soon as they're pressing the button, they're going to press the button to answer the call. They're like, hello. Like, come on.
Classic. You need to give it a second, right? That's official. You should not say hello before 1 second of picking up.
Funny enough, we get a lot of that. But yeah, so let's say, so back to the story at hand, right? So it's an intermittent issue, and both sides are not hearing each other. So what do we do, right? We're trying to isolate exactly where is it happening, how often. And the first thing that I would say maybe misled me and probably costed us some additional time was the customer had different locations in different countries, and they were only reporting this in their offices in the UK. And I was like, there must be something local to this, right? It's either like their specific offices and how they're set up, or something else. Well, the other weird part was that this was working before. So I was like, they must have changed something, right? So that's the other thing. Usually the customer says we never changed anything, and I was like, okay, so maybe you're not sure that you changed it, or that whatever you changed made an issue. And I was like, okay, so what do we do next?
And the no-way call doesn't resolve itself. Like if they wait, it doesn't suddenly start to work. It just doesn't work at all.
No, and that's the other issue, right? So some of these issues, if they halt and resume the call, you start to get audio. But in this scenario, that was not the case, because when I jumped on it the first day, I was like, guys, okay, let's try to get you up and running as soon as possible. And for example, even with a workaround, I was telling them, hey, let's try to recreate it, and if we get an issue, try to halt and resume. And at least you have a workaround, because they have paying customers calling them that, they're not hearing, and they're going to competitors because of it. And unfortunately, that didn't help the situation. But in these scenarios, so what we observed, obviously, on our cloud side, here's the issue. And maybe this is, it might be a bit difficult to follow, but we said that in this call flow, when you have a mobile user from a cell phone, the media is always going through our cloud media server, right? And the reason that it's no way is the following. We get the audio from the cell phone user on our media server, and that media server is supposed to send it to the Webex Calling user sitting in the customer's on-prem. However, because this user is sitting behind a firewall doing a NAT on the packets, on the RTP packets, we don't know exactly where to send it, if that makes sense, until we get the first packet from their side.
Yeah, because you need to have a translation to be able to map it on the reverse path, right?
Yeah, and this is what we call media latching in collaboration. And this is the funny part, like we were getting the audio from the cell phone user, but we cannot forward it to the customers on-prem because they're the ones not sending packets to us. So it was always no way audio because of that, because one side cannot reach to the cloud server. Okay. So we have this issue where, like the customer doesn't send us the media, and we have the cool thing is on the media server, we have the statistics. We can tell that we didn't receive a single packet from the user. And we're like, okay, it's pretty simple. It's either lost in the customer's LAN network, or it was lost somewhere between their network and our cloud service. So in this situation, the easiest solution to find out where it got lost is to take packet captures from two places: the edge of the customer network and the device sending the media. So the customer's PC, because they were using the Webex app, not a physical phone, and the customer's edge device, which in this case was a router from a third-party provider, not going to mention the name. And all right, so you're going to ask, right, I'm sure this is coming up, but okay, why wasn't this information collected previously? Well, it was collected previously from both the device, the Webex app, the PC, and the firewall. However, and let me ask you this question, is how can you tell if a firewall actually sent the packet forward towards the internet provider? If it forwarded the packet from the internal network to the external, if you look at the packet capture, how can you tell?
You can't really tell. You need a packet capture on the outgoing interface of the firewall, right?
Exactly.
You can't capture on the service provider side, so...
Yes, so basically every firewall has what we call like an internal and an external interface, and you need to capture on both to be able to find out if the internal packet which the firewall received, it was forwarded. And the way you tell if it was forwarded is the internal packet is received from a private IP of the device in the LAN network, and the external packet is now NATed. So you should see the public IP of the firewall and then the public IP of whatever it's sending it to, right? So public IP to public IP traffic. And I never had that previously. So I was like, guys, this is the first order of business. We need this packet capture. Now, the challenge with getting that packet capture was you can put the filter on the firewall with the public IP of the firewall, but then you're going to capture all the traffic. You need the destination. And the challenge with that was because of our Webex calling servers that we have such a big pool of them, so many of them, it's dynamically choosing a server. So you never know which server it's going to choose. And you need to first establish the call. While the call is happening, remember it's an intermittent issue. So you have to reproduce an intermittent no-way audio issue, which I think in this case, it was happening every 10th or 20th call was dead air. And then keep the call going so we can find the exact server on our side and put it as a capture filter on the firewall so we can capture the traffic. So that was a challenge that we had to coordinate between the end user, the firewall admin, and myself.
Was it easy to take that capture, or Usually it's always trouble to get captured.
No, it wasn't, because we had the end user install Wireshark. They were capturing traffic on their end, and we were like, "What IP address do you see?" And on Wireshark, packets are flying like this, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm not sure." So that was also a funny thing. But anyway, fast forward, it was the same day. We were able to get the packet capture from both internal and external interface. And at that moment, I was like, please send it to me. Like, I cannot wait to see this packet capture and just to tell you that you guys are not sending the packets. So I get the packet capture, I open it, I look at the packets, and I'm like, oh my God. The packets are there and they're sending them to us. And I'm like, damn. So it's one of the internet service providers in between. And I'm like, this is not going to be easy, because internet service providers, even if you have like a contract for a business, like they're just not gonna reply, or it's gonna be tough.
It's just basically gonna be repeating the same step that we have done with the end user, but now with the service provider, right?
Yes.
And the thing is, you'll have to deal with devices which are much larger scale probably than the small router at the service at the end user side. So yeah, it's just gonna be a bigger problem, right?
Yes, exactly. So that was the end of day one. We were able to get the packet capture and isolate the issue to some more specifics. Then let's say this whole troubleshooting took course over a week until we were able to isolate the root cause. So the next few days were us trying to get the internet service provider to work with us to get a packet capture or something from them and to isolate in their network. Long story short, I'm not going to bore you with the details. Somebody after a few days joined from the provider just to tell us, I see that there's like some historical BGPs or some HSRP routers on our end that are not existing anymore, so I'm going to delete them. And we're like, oh, that's great, like it's going to resolve the issue. Well, it didn't resolve the issue. And we were not sitting idly while we were waiting for that. Like, I was like, okay, let's try to find a way to solve the issue without the ISP. So in Cisco, we have this great product. I'm going to do some product placement here called Thousand Eyes, if you've heard of it. So we're like, okay, let's install Thousand Eyes on the user's PC, and we have cloud agents sitting in our Webex Calling data center. We should be able to see if the traffic from them is coming to us. And we were trying to make it work for so long over these few days. And unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of useful data from it, because all the tests we did were showing no issues. And I was like, this must be incorrect.
It's classic. Every time, a partner goes on site or whatever, they cannot reproduce the issue. They spend 2 days, they cannot reproduce. But then the end customers are seeing the issue all the time and they keep complaining.
And actually the partner in this scenario, I have to give a shout out to them. They were so amazing with providing the licenses to the customer for the Thousand Eyes and setting it up for them, and having the support from Cisco for Thousand Eyes respond to them, and doing all these tests. Unfortunately, it didn't lead us any closer to the resolution, as I said. So there were actually only 2 service providers between the customer and our data center. And again, I was like, okay, it's taking so long. The ISPs are not helping. What else can we do, right? At this point, I was like turning to our business unit, the guys managing the actual servers on our data center, and that they have access to it. It's pretty rare that we do packet captures on our end, because usually what we do is we see that we're not receiving any traffic from the customer. We also check the server statistics if we're at the same time receiving traffic from other customers. And at this point, we're pretty sure to say that, okay, it's not us.
So the idea was to ultimately prove at the Cisco data center, we're not receiving your packets. So even though your firewall is indeed sending them to the outside world, they have to be lost somewhere in the middle on the service providers, right? And then it's like, dear customer, we want to help you, but you have to work with your service providers to find out where they lost. That's the goal, right?
Yeah. So similar as what we did with the customer side, we wanted to take a packet capture at the edge of our data center, where, again, the edge for this customer where they're sending us traffic from, because we have many routers, many edge devices, obviously. So we found out which router that was, and we were like, okay, let's take a packet capture from it, and we were able to set it up pretty quickly. However, unfortunately for us, that was Friday evening, and the customer was already gone for the weekend. But I was able to organize the guys from our business unit to be on call. They were on call during the weekend. I was able to find out what times, etc., and I was ready to support the customer. But unfortunately, they weren't available during the weekend, so we postponed it until Monday next week. And we had to do it off business hours because we have a lot of traffic. So when taking the packet capture in our data center for a cloud solution, off business hours for the EMEA region. Mm-hmm. So fast forward to that time, again, no response from the internet service providers. They weren't ready to take a packet capture. So I'm like, okay, this will be the last straw. We're going to take a packet capture from the edge router of our data center. We're not going to see the packets. And I'm just going to, I've done everything I can for this customer and this partner, right? Like, I don't see what else we can do, right? It's at this point in the ISP. So it's the middle of the night on Monday, and we are setting up with the customer and the end user that's been helping us doing all the test calls. Pretty experienced with Wireshark by this point, you can imagine. And we're doing the test, and we're capturing the packets, and the guys from the network infrastructure team are taking the packets. I'm giving them the filters, everything. And I'm like, okay, even before you download the raw packet captures and sending them to me, just tell me the statistics, right? You should see 0 packets. Mm-hmm. And the guy's like, no, I see packets. I'm like, that's not what you're supposed to say. You shouldn't see packets. We're not receiving them. You're lying.
There goes your theory.
Exactly. And I'm like, at this point, in the middle of a Monday evening, it was, I think, 9 in the evening. And I'm like, shit, it's us. And I'm like, my 7-month-old daughter is like at this point, like trying to go to sleep because she usually falls asleep at 8, and we're living like in a let's say a small apartment, and she's in the other room. She cannot sleep because I'm like all excited talking on the Webex with these people, and my wife is like, "What's happening?" I'm like, "I'm trying to get this solved," And by the way, imagine during this whole week, I'll give you additional context. During this whole week, I'm sick. Like I had some flu or something. So I'm troubleshooting all the week. I'm super sick. My daughter is not sleeping well because her teeth are coming out, and we're not sleeping with my wife very well. And it's everything at the same time. I'm telling this story to a colleague from the office, and he's like, tell me one thing. Did something break in your bathroom? Like the faucet or something? I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, because when something bad happens, everything happens at once. I'm like, now that you're asking, actually the faucet did break and I had to replace it on Wednesday.
Having the worst week of your life at that moment.
Exactly. And my wife is like, what is this week? Like she's not used to seeing me in the days of attack engineer, because as a technical leader, you don't troubleshoot or work on escalations or cases every day. And this was like a pretty hectic week. And anyway, we're back on Monday. We have the packet capture, and I'm like, it's us. Damn it. And at this point, like, I cannot stay for longer because my daughter needs to go to sleep. And I'm like, what do? I need to hand it off to somebody. And shout out to my colleague Esteban. He's another tech lead from the US. I pinged him saying like, because I discussed this case with him once the previous week. And I was like, man, can you take over? Because, like my daughter cannot fall asleep, and we proved its packets are coming to us. Can you work out the details with the network team to see where it's lost? There were actually only 4 hops between the router and the media server in our cloud. I'm like, it's just
surprisingly
4 hops.
manageable to troubleshoot.
Exactly, like it should be easy, but unfortunately I cannot stay longer. And he's like, yeah, sure, man. Like he took it, he stayed with them for a few hours, and I come back on Tuesday morning, sorry, to look at what happened. So, and this is the crux of the story, is we're coming to the root cause, is the media server on our sites, it turns out that these 4 hops, none of them were losing the packets. The media server was receiving the packets. However, the counter for received packets was not incremented. It was 0. Why is that? Because there was a parameter or a counter for packets which nobody thought to look at, because historically I don't think it ever happened, but it's something called a net flow filter. If you've heard of it, I think it's like a Linux term. So the net flow is basically on the kernel level, filtering packets that don't look correct. So if you're sending a TCP packet, UDP packet, whatever packet, if that packet doesn't have the correct formatting of the headers or anything else, it's going to drop it because it doesn't conform to the RFC of that packet standard or whatever. And that's what was happening. So it was dropping the packets that the customer was sending to us because they were not looking like RTP packets. And I was like, how is that possible? What's wrong with that? And then you would ask, like, okay, if the packets were looking so wrong, why didn't I see that in the Wireshark capture? Which is the better question. And thank you for the question. I'll let you know. And this is what I learned from one of the technical leaders from security space in the Krakow office, is something called the checksum offloading, if you've heard of it, offloading the checksum. So nowadays, you have so many applications running on a PC or a laptop that it just doesn't make sense for each application to spend CPU cycles to validate the checksum of the packets that are coming out of it. And the checksum is basically what makes a packet valid, right? It's one of the parameters that it needs to validate.
To verify it's not corrupted, yeah.
Exactly. So all these applications on your PC are sending these packets, and the checksum that they're creating is mostly bogus. It's not correct, it's corrupted. However, before they exit your computer, they go through the network interface, and the network interface is the only place where the checksum is actually corrected. So,
and that's actually why sometimes in a packet capture, you have like all the TCP checksums are wrong. And you're like, oh, there must be corruption all over the place. No. It's like, because the capture was taken at the point where you have the bogus checksums, they're actually correct further down in the network.
Exactly. And this is why I missed the issue in the Wireshark capture, because the checksum validation for UDP, TCP, etc. is by default in Wireshark nowadays disabled. Yeah. You need to enable it. And here's the other thing. We took the packet capture from a firewall device. So it needs to always have the checksum valid. It's not a PC or a laptop, right? So, and then I was like, okay, let's look at the packet capture from the firewall again. So we're looking at the internal interface capture where the firewall was receiving the traffic from the user's PC. All the packets look fine. Then you look at the external packet capture where the firewall knotted the packets and is sending them to the cloud, and you enable the checksum validation on Wireshark. The packet capture lights up like a Christmas tree. All the packets are black. The checksum is wrong. And we're like, oh my God, it was the firewall all along.
So the first firewall, the one that you were troubleshooting like almost a week ago at that point, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And the funny thing is that at the end of the day, we actually discovered a defect on a third-party firewall, which intermittently miscalculates the checksum of UDP packets by just one hexadecimal character wrong. So instead of it being like 7B, it's 7C, for example, right? And I'm like, damn. Yeah, and it's so strange, and I don't think that the firewall vendor fixed it yet. It's still ongoing, right? Their developers are trying to reproduce the issue and recreate it, but at this point they've confirmed it's on their side, and they've seen the issue in like 20 versions ago where it was supposed to be fixed, but apparently it isn't. And here's maybe an additional part of the story is we had a second symptom during troubleshooting the case, which made the problem even more difficult to discover because it was what you call a red herring. It was misleading us. So the second symptom was, the first symptom is basically no-way audio, right? But we had calls where we had one-way audio. And we're like, how is this possible? Like, why do we have two different symptoms here? So I told you that the firewall was intermittently miscalculating the checksum of the packets while doing the NAT. However, okay, I made a mistake. It wasn't one-way audio. It was no-way audio again, but from the point of view of the packet capture of the user's PC, you were seeing the packets coming from Webex. But the user was not hearing anything. And
They were not played. Yeah.
They were not played because the firewall was miscalculating the UDP checksum, not only going out, but also for packets coming in.
So the app was like, no, not going to play this one.
Exactly. And that threw us off even more so. But at the end of the day, when we found this out, it was like, that was something.
It resonates so much with me. It feels like I can hear the customer asking, oh, but how come it's only happening with Webex? Because if the firewall is miscalculating checksums, it should happen for other traffic. But we don't have reports of other traffic having problems.
They were like sending me emails, frustrated emails from the vice president of IT of the company saying like, they're pushing me to move to Microsoft Teams. They're telling me just deploy Microsoft Teams. Let's end this. And I was, like giving them all the latest troubleshooting and why it's not us. Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah, I've had many situations where I said to the customer, you probably have issues in other types of traffic. You just don't notice it. Like, do you have the observability tools to actually measure it? Probably not. And calls is an easy way. You have people reporting, oh yeah, there's some issues. If you have like web browsing and some packets are dropped, it's not going to be noticed somehow.
Yeah, with collaboration, that's another part of the story. That with calls, it's always very impactful, and especially if you're talking about a hospital or something else. So, yeah.
It's usually the iconic duo, calls over Wi-Fi, and then people are like, it's Wi-Fi. No, it's the call application. No, it's the firewall. Everyone involved, everyone pointing fingers, blood everywhere. Yeah, I know.
Refer to episode 2 of this podcast series.
Exactly.
And did you manage to find a workaround or a solution? I mean, you were saying that the problem is still going on, so I imagine that you found something to mitigate the problem in the meanwhile.
I think that the firewall vendor gave them a specific command or a specific workaround which didn't completely eliminate the issue, but it's lowered the frequency of it. Mm-hmm. So they haven't solved it completely. They're still trying to replicate the issue in-house to be able to find out the root cause.
That's also bad when you don't have a proper solution. And like you're saying, it's not Cisco's fault, but at the end user perspective, they're like, oh, still it's that Webex is not working great. And it's like poor image on Cisco, but you're like, no, but it's a third party causing all of this. But perception is different.
At some point, the customer pulled me in again saying like, hey, I have a call with the firewall vendor with an escalation resource from their side. Can you explain to them what the issue is? Because, I gave them the 2 packet captures. I pointed, this is an example of where it's the problem and how you see it. And, somebody had to explain to them again what to look for.
Now you just hope that they don't tell you, yeah, but it's off by 1 because on the Webex side, you're sending me this value and it should be that value, and then it would be correct. I hope it's not that.
Dimitar, I heard you also work on something else right now besides your tech lead duties. You're involved with some AI. Can you tell us a bit about that?
In Cisco, we do a lot of stuff with AI, and we also use it in as probably, I'm not sure if you've talked about this on the previous episodes of the podcast, but we also do AI with customer interactions. But we use something called a Cisco virtual agent, which interacts with customers. But I know how customers and partners might feel about this, that they're interacting with an AI, but we don't call it an AI. In our terminology, we use the term humanoid, because all the things generated by AI, there is always a human that verifies that before it's sent to the customer or partner as an answer. So that's why we call it a humanoid. Now, we did a recent integration for collaboration for an AI campaign, and I have to say it took us quite longer than expected, because for the first campaign for collab we decided to go with what we call a closed domain, which is simply an issue where you don't have a lot of variables. You have the customer always asking this question, and the answer is always like something very simple to find out. There's not a lot of things that can go wrong or variables. And we're like, yeah, this should be simple. And, like AI, like, let's do it. Fast forward maybe like 6 months later, and we finally moved it to production. We were like, this should have not taken this long.
So I think that's two quality marks already, right? So we always have a human verifying or correcting the answer to avoid hallucinations. And also we try to only give to the AI cases that it has a chance at resolving, right? When we see it's troubleshooting and it's like not clear, like, okay, this typically goes to humans, right? We know what the AI is good at and what it's not good at. So we try to only give it the cases it has a chance at resolving. We automatically escalate the others, right?
Exactly. And I have to say, for people that don't work that much with AI, meaning you don't see that much volume of responses produced from AI, you don't understand how bad the hallucinations can be, right? Because like you're chatting with, different AI vendor solutions, and you're like, yeah, this is great, this is fine, this is looking nice. But then from time to time, it's going to hallucinate, and when it does, it's bad. I'll give you an example. There was, I'm working for this Cisco virtual agent, trying to, internally, all these AI campaigns that we develop. There's a team that manages the Cisco virtual agent, and we work on issues on GitHub reported by other Cisco employees. And so one case came to me, and the issue was that the AI generated a URL on cisco.com, which was not existing. So the customer was like, hey, how can I regenerate the password on an ASR router? And for some reason, that specific router didn't have cisco.com documentation at that point, and there was no official document. And that AI, we gave it a different set of functions or tools to call. So it was searching our internal database, a custom RAG database that we created, plus Google, plus the community for Cisco that any partner or customer can ask questions. It didn't find the URL anywhere. So what it did...
It invented one.
It invented one. And it invented it looking so, I have to say, so, what's the word?
It's plausible. It looks good. It looks realistic, right? That's the catch.
Because in the system prompt, it took one other URL that we had that had nothing to do with what it had to generate, and it just kind of copied it. It copied some parts of it, and it generated something. I'm like, we never told it, like generate an URL if you cannot find it. I'm like, damn, this is so crazy.
Yeah, that's why now it's in the human overwatcher's instructions to verify each link that is sent to make sure they're valid, right? What we're trying to have is have the humans augment the AI and vice versa. Because when I see, people usually say, oh, AI is like, yeah, whatever. But the AI thinks about things you would have forgotten. And a lot of like good engineers are like, oh crap, that, that's a good recommendation. Oh, that's a good tip. And they're like, the AI is actually suggesting good stuff. But similarly, it's like, oh, that's one hallucination, and they can remove it from the answer before sending it to the customer. I've had it once where I tweaked an AI answer. I'm like, this is a good answer, but this is wrong. Let me just tweak this. Sent it to the customer, and the customer was like, oh, this is a virtual bot. Please send me to a real engineer. And I was like crying behind my screen, like I'm a real engineer behind the AI.
Offended.
The customer had no idea I was there because it was a bot. But we have humans behind the bots.
Coming back to what you were saying, you mentioned like one of the drawback of AI with hallucinations and things like this. What is one thing where it surprised you with, like something you were not expecting, you were expecting it would be bad and turned out to be actually good?
What surprised me about AI that turned out to be good that I wasn't expecting? I think maybe like the understanding of context and the context window that it can handle, right? That was pretty surprising because I think even the earlier versions of AI models had the issue with how much context window they can handle. And nowadays, I'm actually pretty surprised how much you can give them in terms of context and that they can understand and process it. Because sometimes the system prompt that you generate and put to the AI, it explodes, like it's so huge and there's so many instructions in there. And you're like, for sure, it's going to mess something up. But yeah, it actually doesn't. I have a funny story. I was trying to troubleshoot an issue where it was hallucinating for some reason. And I was trying to solve for 2 corner cases. And I was like, damn, if I fix the first corner case, the second one breaks. And I'm editing the system prompt, right? Then if I fix the second corner case, the first one breaks. And like, how can I fix this? And obviously one tip for anybody dabbling with AI these days is always use the AI to help you generate the system prompt.
Yeah.
Because it knows what the system prompt needs to look like. And I was using the AI to generate the system prompt and tweak it. However, while I was telling it, I need to fix these 2 corner cases, and this is the system prompt, and this is what I'm thinking of adding. And it was generating it, and while generating it, it was giving me a sample output for the 2 corner cases. And it was giving correct answers for both of them. I'm like, but when I put it in my, actual system where I integrated this and I make the call there, it wasn't working. I'm like, damn, like, what's wrong here, right? So I was like so surprised. But then I realized that where I was generating the system prompt, it was using the model 4.0, while where I was using it in production, it was 4.0 mini. And the funny part is, I then went back to where I was tweaking and generating the prompt, and then I said, by the way, the model I'm using is 4.0 mini. It tweaked the system prompt like a few words here and there. I put it in production and it immediately worked. I was like, damn, this is magic.
That's good.
Yeah. Prompt engineering. I'm sure that in a few years from now, we will have a profession that will be prompt engineer, like literal prompt engineer. That's crazy.
I'm actually not sure about that. I was giving a talk to some high school students recently in the Cisco office about AI, and they were asking me like, yeah, is AI going to replace us? Like, what professions is it going to replace? And so one of the questions that I asked them while giving an answer was like, do you think you can just be a prompt engineer without being an SME in a topic? Yes, you can create prompts, you can use the AI, but without being an expert in, let's say, collaboration, wireless, security, what are you going to do with the AI?
I agree. It's one main skill, but it should not be your only skill. You cannot prompt engineer out of nothing. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and for those people that are trying to create coding projects from scratch just with AI, yeah,
you need the coding skills to verify the code, right? And to know what's good, what's not.
Yeah, it just doesn't
for
work.
Sure helpful, but yeah. Well, we don't want to use too much of your time, Dimitar. Thanks a lot for coming. It was a very instructive episode.
Yeah, I hope it's going to be interesting for your listeners as well. And again, thanks for inviting me. It was I had a blast.
Thank you.
It was awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Cisco Tech Stories podcast. You can subscribe to us on the Cisco Podcast Network in SoundCloud or your favorite podcasting app. You can also find us on our own channel called Cisco Tech Stories in every podcasting application. We are also on X at Cisco Tech Story without the S, and on Instagram and YouTube at Cisco Tech Stories. Thanks, and see you next month.
Through fever chills and endless calls, he builds a bridge where others fall. A baby cries in the room next door, his voice still calm, though his throat is sore. He solves the puzzles, he cracks the code. Dimitar carries the heaviest load. Dimitar the hero, unseen, unknown, fixing the world from his humble throne. Through static and wires, he clears the way. Dimitar carries the heaviest load. Dim spins round, the hours blur. His customers' needs come before his cure. No time for rest, no time to break. He gives it all for their sake. Even sick, his spirit won't wane. Through sleepless nights, through ache and strain, he whispers solutions, his tone sincere. Dimitar, the warrior, the engineer. Dimitar, the hero, unseen, unknown, fixing the world from his humble throne. Through static and wires, he clears the way. Dimitar carries the heaviest load.